So 1991 comes along and Don Bluth tackles yet another full-motion video game, Dragon's Lair 2, Time Warp. Frankly, the animation is gorgeous, as always, but although it's just a video game and not a movie, I almost feel like this is the point of where some of Bluth's projects started getting a little bit odd. See, the premise of this game is that the characters Dirk and Daphne from the last game have gotten married, but that apparently doesn't stop this crazy wizard magician guy by the name of MarzGurl from wanting to kidnap Daphne and marry her himself. Their 80 bajillion children are upset that their mother has been kidnapped. Jeez, Daphne's tiny. How did she not die from childbirth after child number 1? And Dirk's terrifying mother-in-law is furious, demanding Dirk go after her, as if he wasn't planning on doing that already. So, okay, there's the addition of this wizard, a psycho mother-in-law, and tons of kids. That's kind of weird for starters, but it gets even weirder when the magician decides to run amok with Daphne through time, which is when Dirk stumbles upon a time machine. It's weird because there's this huge hunk of time where you can hear all this narration.
Listen, lad, hurry. We'll get her back. Defeat the foul wizard. My brother in black.
But I was utterly confused because I couldn't figure out who was talking or where it was coming from. Turns out the time machine is self-aware and talks to Dirk, even during inappropriate times when he's just trying to survive. What's weirder still is that sometimes it looks like Dirk is chasing MarzGurl through time, and then other times it just looks like the animators threw whatever their brains could think up onto the screen. I mean, last I checked, Alice in Wonderland was a literary piece of drug-induced fiction, not a moment in time.
Off with the head! Off with the head!
Frankly, if you want an FMV game that better takes you through time, try Time Gal for the Sega CD instead. The game has some pretty bizarre levels aside from Alice in Wonderland, including a run-in with Beethoven, never mind the fact that I can't figure out why Dirk ends up being absolutely tiny in comparison to him. And it even crosses religious territories, taking Dirk into the Garden of Eden, where he tries his best to avoid the fattest, most unattractive imagining of Eve ever conceived, and insinuates that Dirk played a role in man's separation from God. Amusing to some, potentially offensive to others. In the end, MarzGurl puts a ring on Daphne's finger, turning her into a huge, hideous beast, and I don't quite understand what he was going for with this, if he was trying to make her his wife, but whatever. Dirk gets the ring placed on MarzGurl's finger instead somehow, turning him into an inflated, easily defeatable mess. He saves the day, brings his wife back home, and together with their huge gaggle of children, they ride off somewhere on their talking time machine. Okay, just... what? I mean, no, really, what? Never mind the fact that there's constantly a tremendous clusterfuck of things to do and see on the screen. I mean, I love the challenge of hitting specific buttons rapidly as they appear on the screen and all, but there's so much random animated crap cluttering the screen that my brain barely has time to keep up with what I'm looking at. And since they were trying to shove in a ton of stuff, it just looks like this mishmash, hodgepodge amalgamation of cluttered nonsense. I mean, Dragon's Lair was kind of funny and cute or whatever, but there were a lot of moments where it really felt like fantasy. You were going through a magical castle with lots of traps and danger, and even though it was tongue-in-cheek, it made sense. Be a knight, go into a castle, save a princess from a dragon, you're a hero. Dragon's Lair 2? Well, I barely know what it is. I guess it's fantasy, but it's fantasy in the sense that it's just bouncing around all over the place. The game is pretty darn hard, by the way. With all the messy action bogging down the screen, there's constantly some button to push, something to fight, somewhere to dodge. There's pretty much never downtime. It makes it hard to enjoy the animation, even if your brain could keep up with it. The game also added the ability to collect treasures throughout and rack up points. High score is cool and all, but the treasures are otherwise totally useless. It was originally intended that the collection of all the treasures would end up doing something at the end of the game, but in the end, during the final cinematic, it doesn't matter whether you've collected all the treasures or none of the treasures. You still just see Dirk empty his pack of all the possible findings anyway. I don't know, it definitely doesn't hold the same charm as the first Dragon's Lair did, and while Space Ace started traveling into the bizarre territory, it somehow feels like it held itself together far better than Time Warp does. So again, while the animation in Time Warp is quite pretty to look at, it's a mess in storytelling. But hey, the game itself is challenging enough. It's been released a fair number of times along with Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, so if you're looking for a challenge, go ahead and hunt it down.